Italian Football Podcast.
Let's move on to another attacker that is having a great season. And we're going to do a little profile on Joshua Zirkzee of Bologna, who has really exploded this season in Serie A. If we take a little step back first, I mean, big things were expected of him when he joined Bayern Munich as a 16-year-old in 2017. I can remember how highly rated he was. He scored a hat-trick on his debut for Bayern Munich's second team. That's the reserve team of Bayern when he was 17. He was then integrated into the Bayern first team, and he was part of the squad that won that historic treble in 2020 during the COVID season. And he scored 4 goals in 9 Bundesliga games in that season. And he was tipped by some as being potentially the eventual successor to Robert Lewandowski. But then he kind of lost his way at Bayern. He failed to progress in the following season. He was loaned out to Parma in the second half of the 2020-21 season, and he was a total flop that season. They got relegated. He then moved on loan in the 2021-22 season from Bayern to Anderlecht, and he did well there. He scored 16 goals in the Belgian Pro League. And that saw Serie A come back in for him again. Bologna signed him in the summer of 2022, but he struggled again. Last season, he had a very bad season for Bologna. He scored only 2 goals all season for Bologna, and his reputation wasn't very high coming into this current season. And some question, whether he would ever, fulfill that potential. In fact, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I didn't see him exploding like this. I mean, if you watched him play last season, he's very tall. He's 6'4". He looked like someone that was very big, lanky, but his touch was heavy. He was very untidy player. Some of his decision making, and you just didn't think he was gonna. You just couldn't think that he was going to develop like he has done. But this season, under Thiago Motta, who obviously is one of the best young coaches in Serie A, he really has developed so much, so quickly. And for such a giant of the striker, he's so good at holding up the ball, bringing others into play. He's got quick feet. The way he protects it, but the way he even gets out of tight spaces with his quick feet. Technically, he's very good, and due to his height, strength, and technique, that kind of special blend, he has been compared by some to Zlatan Ibrahimovic. I mean, I know that is an exaggeration. I think let's not even put him in the same. Let's not put him under the same umbrella as Zlatan. But he has got something. He's got something there. His game can still be untidy. He has some loose passes. He does have some heavy touches. I think his shooting definitely needs to improve. He's not the cleanest with his strikes. But there is something there. And, big teams are starting to look at him now. And he's caused problems this season to the biggest teams in Serie A. He scored a wonderful equaliser against Inter when Bologna come back from 2-2 at Inter, at San Siro, to draw 2-2. He was man of the match in the 1-1 draw at Juventus. He caused them all kinds of problems in that game. He got the assist for Lewis Ferguson in that game. And he's been a key player for a Bologna team who are, they're threatening to challenge for a European spot this season. So yeah, he's done a great. He looks like a really. I mean, he's 22 years old, so he's young. He looks like a really interesting player for the future, doesn't he, Nima?
He really does. He really looks like the thing about these big guys, because he is a big guy. He's 6'4", 193 centimeters in metric in the metric system that most of the world uses. He's a big guy and he's very technical. In the sense that, did you see that? Was it a Sassuolo? I think that the way he can, his first touch. That's the thing about him. His first touch can look really bad, but then he has this ability to do these crazy, insane technical numbers, like that goal against, I think it was Sassuolo, that long ball that goes to him, and he just in one movement with the back heel, he takes it down and goes. I mean, it was stunning. It's contender for one of the goals of the season. It was that was so nice to see. I don't know what I think of him. I think the problem with him is, I think when he's good, he's like wow, but when he's bad, he's almost unwatchable.
Yeah.
There's no, it's a, and that's very typical, I think, of young players, talented players, that you don't really know, you don't, they're like, when they're good, they're really good, but when they're bad, they're, you're like, you just want to like, oh my God. And it's a lack of maturity. But to be fair, what you said about Thiago Motta, I think this season, barring that opening game where he was awful, since then, he's consistently played at a good level. At a high level, and he's a very
because I can remember us talking about him after that game.
Yeah.
We were almost we were
it was
laughing at his
bad.
performance.
It was horrible. He looked dreadful. I mean, this is what I mean. He looked like he barely was a professional footballer at times with his touch and movement. And then you watch him after that, and you see again against, I think it was against Sassuolo, that goal is just, there's not very many players in the world who can score a goal like that. I mean, very, very simply put, which is interesting, and it's going to be really interesting to see what he does this season. I'm going to, we're looking at Sule, we're looking at this guy. There's quite a few young players that are having quite an interesting season, and it's going to be interesting to see what his next move is, because I think that if he continues like this and he reaches double figures in the Serie A at the age of 22, well, I think the Napolis and Milans of the world will probably want to have a closer look at him.
Well, that's just it. I mean, Milan were reported to be interested in him in the summer, and they're going to need a replacement for Giroud. So potentially they could look at him again. I know Jonathan David is the favourite, but Napoli have also been linked as signing him as replacement for Victor Osimhen. I mean, I don't think he has that killer in him that maybe, well, certainly, but Osimhen doesn't have. He doesn't have that. I mean, he needs to score more goals. I think he's got 4 goals this season, which isn't bad. It's still a good number, but I think he definitely, his shooting and finishing can probably improve. But we know that with strikers nowadays, number 9s nowadays, that their all-round game and their ability to bring others into play, link up and hold the ball up, and that is so important nowadays, isn't it? And especially when you're playing for a big team, when you're going to dominate the possession and the territory, and you're going to have very deep lines, having to break down deep lines. I think Zirkzee can be very, very useful for that. But he can also be useful when he's isolated, because he's very good at holding the ball up. So I just think that he's I think he's a very, very useful player.